13 and 19, and what social media are they talking about? And they were talking about social media to mean Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all these different things on social media. And the most important thing that it was talking about was really the impact on teenagers. And there were a number of different words that the article used. And of course, the article, if we would actually, I'm just going to share the article so you guys can see it. The article was actually for, of course, it's an academic article. You could see it's very academic article, so it's actually written by three different specialists right there, and you've got the article was really focused on seeing what do adolescents get from social media, and of course, when we're talking about social media, how can it replace the social the social uh let's call it the social way of learning. In other words, the other method, the normal or the traditional method of learning. Should we consider social media is just another phase and another image of the offline media or not? And of course, the article was actually considering a number of different points from those. The article was actually talking about, so I'm just going to take some abstracts right there, and just read some of the things. He said, within the social media environment, peer interactions can occur with increased frequency, immediacy, and intensity. And of course, from these points, the article wanted to grow and actually say that frequency and wanting everything to be in an immediate way, and the intensity of something, that is actually causing an effect on the teen's ability to cope with different things in life, and the way they even learn about themselves or even about others and actually live within a social life. So then goes by changing the frequency or immediacy of experiences, amplifying experiences in demands, altering the qualitative nature of interactions, facilitating new opportunities for compensatory behaviors, and creating entirely novel behaviors. I love that quote that they had actually mentioned, in where the frequency and of course how immediate things are happening, and of course amplifying the experiences. So with social media, you don't really get the truth of what is really going on, but it's amplifying a certain experience. It's making it seem like, this is real, that this person is living a happy life, or this person is so successful, this person is the greatest person, or whatever it is. It's amplifying a new experience that's actually not realistic, and of course altering the quality of the way that people interact, and what is it based on. And then from that point, the article goes in detail and considered that the quality nature of interactions, where with social media, there comes a new understanding of peer relations. So there's a different context in where social media will amplify or make a certain definition. And I love the word that they used. They used social currency. I love that word that they had actually used, that it actually creates a new social currency. In other words, the reason why you are valued or not valued is really based on the number of likes that you get, or based on the number of shares, or based on how many people what is the word that I could use, that the number of people that were amazed or amused by your by what you had provided. And of course, facilitating new opportunities for compensatory behaviors and creating entirely novel behaviors. And when we're talking about novel behaviors, it's creating that postmodern type of postmodern type of behavior, where it's all based on not necessarily the whether something is right or wrong, but it's all based on a narrative. It's very novel, like it's very imaginary in its in the way that it's presented, and not really having that let's say, representation of what really life is. And the other quote I would like to say: prior research suggests that adolescents' peer experiences are prospectively associated with educational outcomes, mental health symptoms, addictive behaviors, and even physical health, morbidity, and mortality decades later. So yeah, what I liked also about this article, like I mentioned, in where it actually looked at mental health, that in previous generations we didn't actually find the effect of the social, let's call it the social challenges, really affecting the adolescents in the way we actually find it today. And of course, this article doesn't say 100% this is the cause of social media, but considers that there's a link between the rise of mental health concerns, depression, and feeling that they're not they're not of any value, etc., is really because of the new effect of how we define the value of a person, how we define morality, and how we define what makes something what makes something as good, or what creates an identity. And of course, creating the identity is the point in where, with social media, it enhanced a new definition of: one, social currency, what makes you a value; two, it actually gave a new definition for identity, in where your identity is really based on how people view you as successful. And of course, the stranger things you bring forward, the more attraction you would get, even if that was not a moral thing. But as long as you had put in the acceptance of others, and you had generated other people's acceptance, then that's what is creating a value for you. And I love the other point that they actually use, which is transformation framework. And here in that article, they said, I'm quoting: "We provide a detailed application of the transformation framework to the domains of peer status, peer influence, peer victimization," and of course they discussed it in the research, the role of social media in adolescents' peer relations. And of course, in the transformation framework, and what they regarded as the transformation framework, was really discussing on what framework is it talking about. But of course, as a Muslim, the framework and that identity, and what makes an identity and what makes a person successful is, yes, although it's different for a Muslim than somebody that's not Muslim in many ways, but in the end, it's, as a Muslim, we're going to use that article to understand how is it really affecting our children's confidence, our children's mission in life, our children's understanding about themselves and their purpose of life, and is it really going that far or not. So these studies, in where they would actually talk about the different ways of how it affects, whether we're talking about the peer pressure, whether we're talking about the redefinition of value, the redefinition of even success, the redefinition of how you even measure success. And this is really important. How you measure success is a very important issue, because and this was something that, of course, psychologists were the ones that researched this, and they talked about how a child measures success for a child. And here, what I mean by that is including teenagers, or what they mean by that is including teenagers as well, which is adolescents. They were talking about how children, or the way that, for a child, psychology, according to the article, understands whether something is right or wrong, is really more of how others would show their impression. In other words, the social impression and that reward from the social relations and the people around them is what makes them feel that, hey, I got people to confirm that what I was doing was right, and therefore I should continue doing what I'm doing. So it's not that for adolescents, they don't necessarily think of the philosophy or even in a philosophical way, and to review text or to review the understanding or to review it as a paradigm based on a certain standard, because their mind is not yet capable of understanding a lot of these philosophies. So they would usually associate a right or a wrong action with how the people that are surrounding them are defining if this is giving them that impression that what you're doing really deserves a compliment, and therefore it is right. So everyone, the people that came in new, we're actually talking about an article that was written about that was written about the effect of social media on adolescents. Oops, I put you guys sorry, that wasn't the article. So the effect of social media on adolescents, and I thought it would be really good to discuss this. And I'm just here quoting some of what they had mentioned in terms of the transformation framework, and in terms of the social currency that they talked about. And the purpose of the idea is really how the transformation and as a means of conceptualizing adolescence. In other words, it's introducing a new concept for the peer experiences, a new concept of values, a new concept of behavior, a new concept of morality, a new concept of what makes something of value, and of course, all these different points actually make up a new concept of identity, a new concept of what makes success, a new concept of yourself. Are you doing the right thing or you're not doing the right thing? So really a lot to talk about. And I know you didn't read all the article. It's almost 40 pages or so. So I would really like to hear your thoughts on that. And I'm sure some of you have your children on social media, so I'm not going to take over. So the questions are, should teens and children have access to social media? And with social media, we're talking about TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, what's it called? Twitter, etc. Should they have access to that or not? I know that the social media, most of the times they would actually look and review your age. And if you are 13 years and younger, they will tell you that you have to have a permission from a parent. And I know that some others will say, well, let's not exaggerate. I'm going to give you a we're launching the impact of social media on Muslim children poll. I want you to look into that and actually answer the questions. I know the last question, I shouldn't have put it in. You can choose whatever. So don't worry about the last question. They're just 2 questions. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. How does social media affect what is the appropriate age to give them access to the outside world? And by the outside world, I also mean social media. What is the impact that it might have on them based on what you had seen? So I'm going to start out with you guys, and you can share your thoughts, and we'll go from there. I know it's really a lot to say, but we'll go from there because I don't want to take over. So what do you think about what I have read and the excerpts that I just read to you? I know Rania was here, but then she was gone. So if you have anything that you would like to add, please add it. Maybe you think that, hey, it's not an issue and my children are using it. Let's not exaggerate. And as long as you are overlooking what they're doing, everything should be fine. Is that what you think? That's it. Asma, go ahead, my dear.
I'm very critical about social media, not even just for children, for adults.
Okay.
Because I think there's a huge influence. I think at some point they're gonna be I wouldn't say responsible, but they're gonna be accountable for their own actions. So you can't always look over. But I don't believe in introducing it early on into their childhood. Because I've seen like this generation with TikTok and everything like that. There's like 7-year-olds on TikTok. And that is so concerning for me, considering social media only really entered my life when I was like 15 onwards. And subhanAllah, there's a lot of like, I think there's so many, even if you're observing or not, your kids can make private accounts. They can, like, there's so many harms. Like, I know there's so many ideologies you're going to get exposed to. There's grooming. There's just, so I think there's a lot of negative impacts of social media. There's being insecure. There's comments. There's like internalizing a lot of the badness in social media. Let's not forget that it's a waste of time. I believe it really affects your development, because if I'm spending my time in front of a screen all the time, it's obviously going to have an impact on me. And I think it's good to mention that most of these social media sites, the developers literally paid like billions of pounds to psychologists just to see the psychology of social media and how to get people addicted to it. And even the developers or the CEOs, most of them don't even allow their children to use that social media because they know the damage. So I on the quiz I wrote, should I allow children? When I'm thinking of children, I'm thinking 13, like under 16, under 15, and I don't think they should be allowed. And I'm adamant about this because, as I said to you, the things I've listed, I think there's too much exposure that they're gonna that's gonna, how do I say it? That's gonna have a detrimental effect on them. But what I will say is, at some point your child's gonna probably ask you. So I think if at 13 or 14 or 15 they came and asked about it, there'd be rules if they were on it. It wouldn't be something that was like a limitless ocean where they can just do whatever they want. But to be honest, even with me, I don't know whether it's a yes or no answer. I just know that 14 under, 15 under should have nothing to do with social media at all. And I'm adamant about this. Even if apps say they have an age, people still make accounts saying they're younger than that. So it doesn't really prevent much.
I like the points that you had mentioned, ideologies, and the exposure to the different ideologies and how they affect, of course, one's confidence, one's understanding of the identity and the insecurities. And this article, by the way, that I had actually shared before, the article does actually talk about in terms of the insecurities, well, whether it's insecurity about oneself, that they feel that what I'm doing is not enough, or am I getting enough likes, and that for an adolescent, their understanding of what makes something good or containing any value is really how others show their expression as a type of confirmation that it contains value. So it's really that acceptance that they would get from the people surrounding them. So that insecurity regarding oneself and how they view themselves, and by the body. And by the way, what I find interesting about the article is that it did actually mention, I forgot where exactly that number in terms of percentage, that girls and women are more likely to feel insecure about their appearances than boys. And boys would feel that the value of how others might actually like, or even give that compliment on the things that they do rather than the things that they appear in. So that's why you would find more girls engaging in TikTok, whether she's dancing or whether she's makeup tutorials or makeup artist or whatever it is, or showing off her physique, or trying. And of course, then you would see that impact on the girls feeling insecure about their image, or trying to do all those different filters in order to make their appearance appear differently, in order to meet the criterion of what others would regard as the best image of something, of course, or the best image for whatever they're doing. It affects the children development. The article does actually talk about how with social media, and there's a very important point that they actually focused on, which is when something happens immediately. So to feel that that immediate change must take place is actually being studied, in where how do children feel that whenever effort I put, there has to be an immediate change, an immediate response, fast enough for me to feel, is it actually of that value? Am I doing the right thing or not? And rather than wait and actually be patient in order to put in more and more effort to make the change. And of course, I love the point that you talked about addiction, in where the article does actually talk about the addiction and feeling that response right away, and that you would get to choose what content of course you're viewing, and that addiction in where you would feel that you have to right away see the response, because it was actually talking about the dopamine, and how one would feel that pleasure in getting that response right away. And of course, they're choosing the content to view, and therefore they don't get exposed to the different challenges, in where how they have to let it in and listen to the other perspectives, or even view other contents that probably is not their likes. And of course, if you're only viewing entertainment and entertaining content, then you're going to stay within that entertaining piece. Too much exposure, it will have its effect. And they did actually talk about, depending on the number of hours in that article that I had mentioned before, they do actually speak about the number of hours, and how they had seen in the study, the more hours, the impact it had on their grades, the impact it had on even the mental illness. So I believe they said 57% of growth in mental illness compared to the years before in adolescence. So this is really alarming, when we speak about that. Go ahead, Esma, you wanted to add something.
Sorry, might I add something? Yeah. With the funniest thing is with TikTok, especially
Mhm.
TikTok as well. I feel like it's so bad to the point that like it has its own tarbiyah, social media.
Mhm.
Like you could do your whole job trying to raise a good child, and then your child would be being raised by social media. I can't explain it. Like all those lessons that you're trying to teach them, they can be very easily untaught through exposure. And another thing is like, on TikTok, it's kind of made everybody like copy and paste. They think the same. They and it you might just see someone do that and be like, oh, you're just being particular. But honestly, when I hear people and their jokes are the same, their train of thought is the same, that what's how do I say this, like what's so great about being copy and paste, because the uniqueness gets taken away. Like even it's kind of disheartening for me, because I'm just like, what happened to people uh like having differences and like being unique before the whole TikTok phase? People are talking about the same topics because they're trending. People are concerned with the same issues because they're trending. I remember there was like people on TikTok saying that, oh, they're Muslim and they're gay, and as a result many other people start to show like that. And it's, to me, normalization is the first step to uh, how to say, to like influence an ideology,
Mhm.
because it doesn't take you saying that it's okay, it takes you just exposing the person to that. And the more a person is exposed to it, the more that they don't see it as such a huge thing anymore. And then the more they want to it. It's like khutuwat, it's kind of steps. And I just, honestly, if I had the money, I would buy TikTok to delete it. I would literally just purchase it. But yeah, I think there's huge factors. And it's really, when you say that I don't mind my kid going on it, you have to do a lot of, like, I can't explain to you. When you expose your child to it, you're already putting them towards the harm. You're like saying, I'm happy to allow them to be exposed to all that. I'll just control what affects them. But you're not really in control of that because you don't know what is going to affect them. You don't know what thing is going to get to them, put a lot of doubts in them, start making them question certain things. Like they talk about how some people might have watched one debate, someone debating about like faith or something like that. And there are Muslims that watched one video about a debate and they lost their faith just because of how much it had an impact on them, you know?
Mm-hmm. There was actually, I forgot his name. He's actually on YouTube. He's got this video, and he was actually talking about the effect of social media on the younger generation. I'm sure you guys actually heard of him, and I would. Simon Sinek is his name, and he talks about the younger generation and the effect of and how the effect of social media. I think this is it. Maybe I could actually yeah, this is, yeah. I'm just gonna just let you guys hear some of the things. Okay, so we're just gonna hear some of it.
Feature have a meeting where somebody doesn't ask me the millennial question. What's the millennial question? Apparently, millennials as a generation, which is a group of people who were born approximately before and after, are tough to manage. And they're accused of being entitled and narcissistic, self-interested, unfocused, lazy. But entitled is the big one. And because they confound leadership so much, what's happening is leaders are asking,
Sorry, you guys, my uncle's calling me.
the millennials, what do you want? And millennials are saying, we want to work in a place with purpose. Love that. Make an impact, whatever that means. We want free food and beanbags. And so somebody articulates some sort of purpose. There's lots of free food and there's beanbags, and yet for some reason they're still not happy. And that's because they're missing. There's a missing piece. What I've learned is that I can break it down into 4 pieces. Right? There are four things, 4 characteristics. One is parenting. The other one is technology. The third is impatience, and the fourth is environment. The generation that we call the millennials, too many of them grew up subject to, not my words, failed parenting strategies, where, for example, they were told that they were special all the time. They were told that they could have anything they want in life just because they wanted. Some of them got into honors classes not because they deserved it, but because their parents complained. And some of them got A's not because they earned them, but because the teachers didn't want to deal with the parents. Some kids got participation medals. They got a medal for coming in last, right? Which the science we know is pretty clear, which is it devalues the medal and the reward for those who actually work hard, and that actually makes the person who comes in last feel embarrassed. They didn't deserve it, so it actually makes them feel worse, right? So you take this group of people, and they graduate school, and they get a job, and they're thrust into the real world, and in an instant, they find out they're not special, their moms can't get them a promotion, that you get nothing for coming in last, and by the way, you can't just have it because you want it. And in an instant, their entire self-image is shattered. And so you have an entire generation that's growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations. The other problem, to compound it, is we're growing up in a Facebook, Instagram world. In other words, we're good at putting filters on things. We're good at showing people that life is amazing, even though I'm depressed. And so everybody sounds tough, and everybody sounds like they got it all figured out. And the reality is there's very little toughness in it.
Oh no, my phone died. But of course, I really want you to watch that one. It's for Simon Sinek. I would have actually made you, see it, on YouTube and actually viewed it on, but for that copyright, it won't allow you. YouTube will actually delete the video or my video entirely because of what it contains. But it's really important to actually listen to this and how it affects the younger generation, and even the way they view themselves, and how they later get accustomed to cloning others' behaviors, that it's right, and normalizing everything, and it becomes that part in their subconscious mind in where it redefines identity, redefines redefines morality. It redefines what is of value. And this is really important because the second that you redefine value, and here's the thing, is that you might think, yeah, he's just watching a girl dancing, or she's just watching a girl dancing, or she's just watching this tutorial and she's getting this. But there are actually a number of different things that she's also viewing. The number of different things, which are, could be that, hey, she's got 100 or 1 million subscribers, 2 million subscribers, 3 million. That means she's getting that appreciation from others, and that social appreciation is actually sending out a message that what you're doing is right. And of course, the more followers you're getting, the more likely you are actually going to get money coming in. So in other words, people's acceptance of your action actually brings in money later on, and that becomes a redefinition of what makes success. And then it becomes that that a social currency that we just talked about right there. So let's go for the second question. That was great, Asma. What is the age? What is the appropriate age to give them access to the outside world? The article was actually talking about comparison. Is it really true that the outside world, that is, they didn't say outside world, they just called offline. Is the offline necessarily the same as online? In other words, if you're getting them, hey, go offline, and going outside of social media, and social media is just a reflection of the offline world. Is that really true or not? According to the article, it's not true. According to the article, the online is a lot filtered, and you're just choosing these different pigments. And especially in the teenagers' world, a lot of those pigmented images or pigmented videos are actually reflecting more of a filtered relationship, filtered definition of value, filtered, or even what they had called the transformation framework, and where it's transforming, it's transforming, it's transforming on the inside, but really the transformation that happens to their identity is really because they're thinking that, hey, I'm not as successful as X or Y and Z, when in reality, X and Y and Z are really not successful. They just showed you a 30 or a 20-second or even a 10-second video of them smiling or being happy, probably on a beach, when their reality is they're probably feeling in school. So what age, let's ask you, what age is the appropriate age to give them access to the outside world? What do you think? I'd really love to hear your perspectives on this. Asma, you were the most one that was giving these great ideas. In fact, no one else wanted to share anything. So I'd like to hear, Asma, and also other sisters that are joining with us. What do you think? Idil, go ahead, Idil. We only have 10 minutes. Go ahead, Idil. I'd love to hear
Okay, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So I wanted to say, with the appropriate age, I think in my family anyways, it changed, because for me and my family, I think 16 or 17 or even 15 would have been appropriate. But thanks to the pandemic, when we got, computers at home, the kids were off in their places, that age quickly dropped down to like 9 and 8 and whatever age, because the kids had access to electronics that I necessarily would not give them that much access to. So I think that changed a little bit with the pandemic. Now that parents are not in charge of, how much you want to filter or how much you want to give the kids access to social media, because they're in a class and their friends are chatting. They're like, I'm doing this. They're, they're in class, but they became technology savvy and they got to know social media and things like that, because they were exposed to, everything because of the pandemic. And that's what I wanted to say, because that was a little shock, but, we're still trying to recover in my family, because, I think that exposed kids to unnecessary amount of social media and electronics. Right. Exactly.
Okay. Well, yeah. So what do you guys think? Let's see what others think. For myself, alhamdulillah, the pandemic did not actually change our structure at home. In fact, we became even more strict, and we simply just would take out the electronics out of their hand, and it's that simple. The schooling, alhamdulillah, with myself, I'm the one that does the schooling. I don't put them with the online schooling, etc. It's actually me that teaches them the subject. It's me that gives them the laptop, and they use it right in front of me in the kitchen where I would see the screen, and there's no other way to do it. They don't get the laptop or whatever gadget. They don't get that just when they can claim that they're actually studying. I would be there to watch it. I would be there to see it. I would be there to explain it, even to make sure that they're actually not going left and right. And I do have also the account, so I would see the history of their accounts. Yes, they know how to delete the history, so I'm aware of that. So I would have them in front of me, that way they would know that I could turn with my back just around and actually see everything. So pull out the laptops, pull out the gadgets, pull out everything, and they will be under your control, and not necessarily, they can cry, but hey, if you're going to surrender every time they cry, if you're going to surrender every single time they whine, then definitely they will get what they want. But you have to let them understand that you are stubborn on living the principle. They're whining to live based on their pleasures is really dependent on how stubborn you are on the principle. When they see you stubborn on the principle, they will learn that principle is not a claim or a slogan to raise, but is actually a word to live. That this is that limit. This is the limit, and you have to actually show them that this is how I live it at home. I don't know how others are living it. I'd like to hear that. Let's see what others think of it. No one has, I want you guys to look at this article, all right? And please read it thoroughly let's see, Asma, you can say it. Asma, go on the microphone. She said 100%,
yeah,
in fact, go ahead. Go ahead, Asma.
You can read it. No, I just wrote on the chat.
Read it. I love your accent. Read it.
I said 100. I said 100%. In fact, you can even educate them on why you're banning them from it, so they don't think you're being strict for no reason. Because if you're just saying no, they won't know. But if you actually educate them, they might actually get some.
Here's one thing, Asma. Do we always need to use that? What if they're not convinced, even though you brought in all the evidence? Should we still say,
you don't need to convince them? I'm just saying, just to give them context, so they're not thinking you're just doing something for no reason. It doesn't matter about whether they accept your reason or not, but it's kind of like you're educating them too. And I believe, I don't know how to say this, it's in your ball game, as you said, to some extent. And you know how there's 3 types of parents: there's the assertive parent, and then there's the authoritative parent, and then there's the passive parent. You have to try your best to be the assertive parent, and the assertive parent doesn't necessarily just ban their kids. They build their kid as they preventing them from things. And I was just curious, what age is your limit? Do you have is that rule that you just said for everyone in the household, or is it a specific age?
So in general, I don't necessarily think that from one child, children don't come with instruction manuals in how to raise it in them. Some children are more mature than others, but in general, fitna does not necessarily know an age, but children are more exposed to fitna, or let me say, are a lot more, what is the word that I could use?
Susceptible.
susceptible, there you go, susceptible to absorbing fitna simply because they don't know the consequences of a lot of fitnas. So you don't necessarily want to rush in giving it to them. What are you using it for is the question that should always be used, because children and even adults, even if you're an adult, if you are using it for dawah, to read the news, to educate yourself on, let's say, what's going on in the community, etc., then I would say, well, hey, you're using it for the right thing. But if you're just using it just to entertain yourself and just to look around, well, you know what? You, even as an adult, should actually leave social media. So not because you think you're an adult that, yes, I don't have to have anybody telling me what to do, because in Islam, it's an issue of building an identity. It's an issue of building a behavior. It's an issue of building a mission. It's an issue of building a purpose. What is your purpose to get on social media? If your purpose to get on social media is just for entertainment purpose, well, you're definitely thinking the same type of with the same concept as a child. So in other words, even if you're an adult, it doesn't make you more mature if you're thinking in the same way as a child, which is, I just want to entertain myself. I want to laugh at something. I want to have fun. You're thinking at the same level of a child. So it's not an issue of age. It's an issue of maturity, to mean, are you really mature enough in what purpose you use it for, how you use it, and of course, what is that shaping in you? So if that person, let's say 17-year-old, is actually mature in that sense, then with supervision, because anybody could actually fall in the fitna, I would probably give it to them. It depends on what they're doing, depends on what they're using it for, and it depends on how mature they are. If it's for a good purpose, for da'wah, for Islam, to educate themselves, to do what's haqq, to do what's what justice is as a Muslim, how to implement that, then you're using it the right way. So that's my idea. Let's see, what is the impact that it might have on them? I'd love to hear, of course, the impact on, oh, well, it's actually 11:56. So we're at the end. Does anybody want to add anything? So this is the article. We just had a little conversation. This is the article that I want you guys to read. It's really, really, really important to read. I know it's long. I know some of the words are extremely hard, but this is actually the article. You could see this is the title. Look it up. Take the time to read it, just to learn about how things are actually affecting us without us realizing how it's affecting our identity, etc. It's easy to get it. It's easy to find. And of course, you could get access to it even by Googling this article's title, and you'll, you know. Walaikum assalam.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say a few things though. Okay. First, from my own experience as an educator, and then from supporting family with kids and observing adolescents. So what I observe is that most of these kids, why most of them get on the social media, and really most people too, is for connectedness, because of connection, when there's something missing. So most cases, most of those kids, like as a parent, we're trying to, or we don't want our kids to do this, then we have to provide an alternate, like create a space that will be able for them to, create room for other things that they can do outside of that. Like there's an adage in my place, we call it an idle man is a devil's workshop. Like, when people are idle, they can always do some things. So not necessarily, we give them access to the internet or something. They might get it somewhere else if we are not being careful. So the idea of being like in control of something, we have to set a limit or boundary of, this is what I want. And Like I think Sister Asma said something about letting them know why and what the consequences are. Yes, but at the same time, we have to create connection with them, and that way it will be more like they know the reason and who they are and why they are different from other
So
people.
let me ask you this, Sutendi. What if the child was not convinced? You talk to your 12-year-old daughter or child that why they should not be getting a phone or a social media account, and then they said, "But my friend has one. So why can't I? She's good and I'm even better. And how come now she's actually understanding that she was good and therefore she deserved it, and therefore she should deserve one too. She actually thought it was a reward. Should you listen to her and wait until she's convinced, or should you have a boundary?
Okay, so that's one. Like for that child, one can validate the point that the child says, like, this is the point. And what children need and why we are adults is they need wise adults to be able to sense what is really going on. From the example that you just cited, it's obvious that maybe the child is already comparing herself with her friends and something. So that's when boundary will come in. Then what are the boundary? And then you have to be clear about it. And the child might not know right now, but with time,
So Sister
inshallah.
Yutundi, you still didn't answer it. So if the child is still not convinced, you clarified the reason, you understood what their concept of what makes it good for them to get a social media account or whatever, and you explained you explained the consequences, you explained your reasons, you explained all the different wise things that you could explain, and they still are not convinced, and they thought that they had refuted every single point that you had laid out.
Yes, so that's where the boundary comes in. The parents have to be clear, and then there's the power, the power that the parent has. It's not, I know some people will say it's a control, but it's not a control. It's just like a guide, like a path. The child might not really understand why you said no and no, but with time, maybe the child will understand.
Well, it's a discipline. I agree with you. In the end, control is a narrative that or a caption somebody might put, but in the end, there needs to be that discipline. There needs to be that, even if somebody wants to say it authoritative. Hey, the whole world and every single country has a certain authority that would, in the end, enforce a certain law. There has to be a certain law. There has to be an enforcement of what you think is supposed to be in discipline. So even if the child is not convinced, there has to be that limit that you believe that it's right or wrong. And in the end, if the parenting is going to be based on the child's concept, and I'm going to wait for them to agree with me convincing them, then they're going to lay out all these different perspectives, and they're the ones that are going to be deciding their path in life. And definitely, if they don't understand that what made you as a parent, what made you having the better authority, and more importantly, the best of the decisions, is really because of the education that you got, the experience that you have in life. And certainly that makes up at least 75% of the probability or the chance that you're actually making a better idea and a better decision than the decisions that they are making, which is probably 15%. 15% because they lack experience, and they also lack the education to understand the consequences of what they're doing. So in the end, the 75% chance that you have the better decision, you have to implement it and not necessarily wait for their consent. Within our society, especially liberal society, consent is a lot more is deified as if it is the center of the center of morality. But in Islam, that's not the center of morality. It's not consent. It's not consent that is the center of morality, but it is actually the principle itself. The value itself is what actually makes something one, the right responsibility and the justification, and of course the center to making something right or even wrong. It's actually the value and what it contains. If you're not going to implement the values, then you're just going to be a sponge and you're just waiting for others to enforce their values on you. And then in the end, the child is watching you. If the child is watching you and seeing that you easily gave up, and then they're going to take over, they're creating this type of lobbying in where they're going to start to enforce their inexperience, to be better English, their inexperience on you. And then in the end, the lack of principle, which of course they're not basing it on principle. So whenever we say, hey, we want to enforce a law, it's not based on lobbying, and it's not based on what you want the law to look like, but it's supposed to be based on the principle that that is based on al-akhlaq, the identity that you carry as a Muslim. Sorry if I took over the discussion. So jazakumullah khairan, everyone. It is actually 12:05, so we will inshallah continue next time, so 2 weeks from now, and inshallah we will continue our discussions. We will be giving, inshallah, the stories of the Anbiya. I'm really excited about that. So if anybody would like to say anything before we leave, go ahead. I would be happy to listen. I guess everybody is, did I enforce too much on you guys? Yeah, absolutely. When you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. Absolutely. Absolutely. Asma, حبيبتي, ربي يرضى عنك and ربي يرضى عنكم جميعا, and جزاكم الله خيرا for attending. I could see, oh, Dr. Hinna Rashid is here as well. So we will see you all, inshallah, in our other days. Tomorrow, stay tuned for our tafsir. We're continuing with tafsir Surah Al-Baqarah. And it's going to be in person in Masjid al-Rahim and also on Zoom. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.